When last we met our heroes, it was before conferences, before Thanksgiving. Now we're back and better than ever. More brain dead than ever.
Brain rot was the word of the year, and it's 2 words.
Welcome to Cult Favorite, the podcast that has never traveled to another planet. I'm Merinda Simmons.
And I'm Mike Altman. We are 2 religious studies professors trying to understand all of these cult documentaries we can't stop binge watching.
You know what, Mike?
What?
If I ever was to travel to another planet,
Yes.
I'd want you to be on my spaceship.
Aw.
Yeah. I'd take you with me.
Very few people would want to be trapped in a small metal box, like, whatever.
I mean, I'm assuming that it goes really fast.
That's the question. I mean, that's a whole question. Like, how long does it take to get to the Elohim? Like, what's that look like?
Probably a long time. I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of details that were left out of this thing on that front.
Tell our friends how to support the show.
You can support our show and help more people find us by following us on all the socials at Cult Favorite Pod. Also, be sure to subscribe to the show wherever. Leave us ratings, leave us reviews, leave us comments.
We're talking about the Raëlians today, and there have been allegations against the group to do with sexual assault. That is our content warning. I will talk about why and how all of that gets kind of complicated.
Even the content warning raises questions about how this documentary, what it was doing.
I mean, I give a massive side eye to authenticity claims in general, but this one is just like, oh boy. Just lots and lots and lots of those flying about from all sorts of sides. So, what did you know before about the Raëlians, Michael?
So when you texted me the link to this, I thought before I opened it, I thought it was Urantia.
I don't know what that is.
It's another like space new religious movement thing. Okay. It's the one that shows up. We talked about Kamare. That's the one that when they go to the place with the guy, that's Urantia.
Right.
So I thought so then I was like, oh wait, it's not Urantia. And then I was like, that's all I know. So This was completely new to me. What about you? What did you know?
One of my beloveds used to live for a long time in Montreal, and that is one of the places where the Raëlians gained some traction. So I had heard about them that way, but I was a teenager, like on the later side of my teenage years when the debates around human cloning were happening. So I remember that really well. I remember when Dolly the sheep was introduced. Do you remember Dolly?
Oh, I remember Dolly the sheep.
All of those things become important in terms of like talking about this group. And the documentary specifically is Raël, the Alien Prophet, which is a 4-episode series on Netflix, released this year. I think the fact that the title is his name is telling in lots of ways.
So it's made by a French production company.
Mm-hmm.
And all I could find was, and maybe because I wasn't searching like French Google, but all I could find was one sort of press release about it. And it was like pitched as like very much like a look at this
about the documentary
thing.
itself.
Yeah, the documentary was from the production company, sort of like, here's this new documentary that was just bought by Netflix that were coming out.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very much like, look at the weird thing.
Yeah.
Like here's an inside look at we talk to the Raëlians themselves.
Yeah.
So it was, I think, I think it was aimed at, a European audience and definitely, I think, aimed at people who remembered them from the 2000s or earlier who were French, who were like, oh, whatever happened to those guys?
Yeah.
And so
Raëlism is now grown into the international Raëlian movement. It started in France in the 1970s when Claude Vorilhon claimed that aliens gave him a message to share with the world. He becomes known as Raël. One of the followers says that means bringer of light. What is not in the documentary, one of the many things that is not in the documentary, which we will talk about later, is that his claim was that the aliens gave him that name. It was derived from Israel. The aliens are called the Elohim, and Raël said that they're the ones who created humanity. So the people that a lot of folks, the people who come to be known as prophets to many people are human Elohim hybrids whose role is to tell humans about their origins. But the group, so it's getting traction in France for a couple of decades, from the 70s into the 90s. But at that point, they start getting a lot of negative press. They relocate to Quebec in the 90s, and a new phase begins. Most importantly, in this new phase, they formed the lab called Clonaid under the direction of Brigitte Boisselier. She was a chemist in France, a longtime Raëlian. She joined in the early 90s, but is still a follower. She now lives in Mexico. She's one of the people that they interview. That lab, under her direction, aimed to advance the science of human cloning. And in 2002, she claimed that the first human clone, named Eve, was born. So here's the arc of the actual documentary. 4 episodes. First one is intros. We start with flashes of this guy boasting a message about extraterrestrials, kissing women, and chanting, and driving race cars, and advocating for human cloning. And then, it's just like this barrage of images that create a certain kind of aesthetic around Raël. We then meet Brigitte Boisselier and hear that she still holds to her work and beliefs. Then there's a flashback. So mid-70s France had already been above a bunch of UFO sightings that were being reported. So this was very much of a time in a moment where conversations about extraterrestrial life was happening, whether life on other planets was a real thing. People were spotting spaceships, and those accounts were showing up on the news. Raëlians appears on a big TV show to talk about his own experience. He publishes a book in, I think it's 74.
Yeah.
Just titled The Book That Tells the Truth. But
best title ever.
I love it. Right.
What are you going to argue? It's the book that tells the truth.
Because the truth is, they hold to intelligent design, but it's the Elohim, these aliens that created life on planet Earth 25,000 years ago. We don't get a lot of that context, the origin story about their theology. We learn about a ritual baptism that happens, a transmission of a cellular plan, they call it. This lets the Elohim recognize you as someone who knows the message, which is very important to them. And that's how people start becoming official followers. Then they start appointing other guides as the movement grows. Raël gets a second message taken to their planet, has dinner with, Moses and Muhammad and Buddha, and he learns that Jesus is his brother.
Yeah.
This moves him from messenger to prophet status. So his teachings, we learn about how familiarity with your own body it's self-reflection as its own brand of enlightenment.
Yeah.
So the one that they talk about the most, because I guess it's the most sensational, I don't know, but is they would do an exercise with a mirror where they would examine their own genitals, their anus, and get to know their own bodies in a more intimate way.
There are a variety of sex therapists who advocate the same kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I think
it's not branded the same
It's
way.
very much to do with where those things happen, right? Free sexuality is a big part of the teaching of the group. Lots of them have multiple partners. The episode ends with an aim to build an embassy as a concrete mission for the group. We see Raël himself sitting down for an interview. Episode 1 finishes. Episode 2, media reactions. It goes from we learn about the group. We see how the media portrays them. We learn about their cloning experiments. And then the last episode really is just a lot of fallout and people's feelings about it. Mm-hmm. So with episode 2, the media becomes a real antagonistic force as far as the group is concerned. They talk about, the work of building the embassy, their need for funding. They're doing a lot of fundraising. There's a mission to Israel that doesn't go very well that we also, it just kind of is dropped there.
20 of them go to Israel. I'm what's going to happen there?
No, how would we know? That is a narrative thread that gets introduced.
The gall to talk to these rabbis in Jerusalem and be we have the real Messiah.
You say that you're the real Messiah. Right. there's more about how Raël is into race cars. But really importantly, there's an appearance that he makes as he kind of as the group grows and as his own media presence grows. He appears on a big TV show at the time, and his followers called it a trap. But the topic is on the treatment of children in communes. The host, Christophe Dechavanne, he asks Raël about like these quote new relationships with children. Do you advocate for them? Whatever. And he's like, well, we advocate for sexual freedom 100%. The presenter then reads like someone's experience about molestation. It's unclear like where that comes from, if they're talking about like from what kind of access to the group. Is it from within the group?
Right.
An allegation against the group. But Raël agrees with the host, like, yeah, you shouldn't touch kids. End of story. But make sure to say we're also into free speech and grown-ups can talk about whatever they want. So there is this like he's kind of treading this line, this boundary of where free speech starts and stops, and it's very uncomfortable for the people who are talking to him and hearing from him. So then they bring on this person who had been in the group, who now calls Raël a monster, manipulates people, and like at the end of the show, it's very like Geraldo Rivera, like the question of like, so should cults be banned? You tell us, audience. 88% say yes. Like, I don't know.
It was interesting to see that the 90s in France looked a lot like the 90s in the United States in terms of the general
media's gonna media.
Yeah.
So something changes but like that is a real turning point, and public opinion turns against the group. There are some trials of Raëlians that are convicted of sex offenses against minors. That's really important because that is kind of start and stop of a lot of the image of the Raëlians in France at the time.
The Raëlians didn't have like a commune, even though that was what the show was about. Like most of the people, they would get together for like events, and they had like a space they'd go like camp out.
Yeah.
But we're not talking about like a compound or like they didn't ask people to isolate from their family. So there's a way that like
it was very like, here's the message that I received from the Elohim.
Yeah.
Believe it or don't.
Right.
Whatever.
But that leaves open a space where like you can't like go raid this place and say like this happened to me here and in this Raëlian compound where I was held or whatever, right? It's like this guy who's a Raëlian. Right. Yeah. So it's a very different that changes later, but like at least at this point.
The boundaries are much more porous.
Yeah.
So the way that the group responds to these media representations and, reports of these sex offenses that then get brought before court is pedophiles exist and they're the worst and they're everywhere. And so they start distributing leaflets that are like, protect your kids from pedophile priests and don't send them to Bible study.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And we even see a Catholic priest at one point saying like, yes, there are like sex abuses in the Catholic Church, yada, yada, yada. So, but now they are.
And even the Judge Frenesh, I'm really bad at French names, unless they're hockey players.
Sure.
But like, he even like tips his hat, like, well, you got to give it to him on that one.
It was very clever. I mean, but in terms of Catholicism, and we hear from like, some people who are interviewed about this, just like from media reports at the time, where it's like, yeah, but that's a really small minority. Well, of course, the Raëlian followers would say the same thing about their group too. Now, in terms of their representation, they're a dangerous cult, right? So they get that label. Another thing that happens at this time, of course, is that like we've talked about Jonestown and how that really creates a culture of like cult watching. And, a lot of the new religious movements in the 60s and 70s that were about free love and experimentation and forming community in different ways, then turns into it takes this turn after Jonestown.
Yeah.
So now they're about warning folks. So against all of this negative media coverage, the group leaves. Raël leaves, sets up new shop in Quebec. The Quebecois are more laid back as a public, but one of the followers says that like the people in the group, the Raëlians themselves, they are like more serious and organized. And then we get an introduction to cloning. Dolly is introduced to the public in 1997. There's like a preview of cloning to come, and the judge that gets interviewed, the former judge, tells us that there are 3 stages to joining a cult, right? Seduction, disruption, and culmination, which is like, I devote myself to my guru. And the full devotion to the guru is like Brigitte Boissellier's interest in pursuing this cloning campaign. That's episode 3. So Clonaid Lab is financed by this couple who loses their baby and wants to bring them back to life. It's a pretty harrowing story. There are these young women who agree to be surrogates, including Brigitte's own daughter. There are congressional hearings held in the U.S. that kind of give a seriousness to the process. And then, of course, we have the like moral and ethical conservative backlash that you and I are probably familiar with from like what we experienced in our teens. So this is when, well, and I guess in our teens, I don't know. I guess I was 20 at the time. It's fine. George Bush.
You can claim a millennial place for this time.
Thanks.
Yes.
Thanks, bud. So George Bush, like calls to ban all human cloning. The House votes to do so. Brigitte gets flagged by the FBI. But then she announces in 2002 that the first human clone is born. An American lawyer files suit regarding like child exploitation because this kid is, according to him, like a victim of a genetic experiment. He wants to protect the kid's legal rights. And Brigitte is not giving any information about the parents. So there's all this skepticism that starts growing because the media was all over it. They want to tell this story. But now there's no proof and they want that. But the courts can't do anything because there's no jurisdiction. We meet an investigative reporter, Brigitte McCann, who goes undercover to get like the scoop.
That was the most anticlimactic court scene where the judge is like, "Where is the baby now?"
And she's like,
Israel.
It's
like, has it ever been in Florida? He's like, no.
No.
You know what it reminded me of too?
I can't do anything then.
It reminded me of the whole Elian Gonzalez thing.
Yeah.
Which was also a Florida court about a child. Like,
yeah. Well, so that episode ends with us meeting this undercover reporter, this investigative reporter, and another scientist who had been working with Boisselier saying, yeah, this was all fake. There was no baby. The last episode, we get the undercover reporter's experience. She felt very unsafe among this group of exhibitionists who totally like practiced public masturbation and, self-examination and stuff. But she, to her mind, like Raël was addicted to female submission. We learn about the Order of the Angels that's established. They're supposed to like they have different like levels of sexual access in the group, but they're going to be available to the Elohim when they come back to Earth. Raël takes a wife, Sophie, when she's like 16. She poses naked for Playboy. They live together for a couple of decades, and then he leaves her. But then it cuts back to cloning. So like, I don't know, these interspersings of like, is it a sex cult? Is it a cloning cult? It's kind of both. We're going to flip back and forth, but there's not a lot of like, there's not a real narrative through line that ties it all together. So it's very splicey that way.
And the Brigitte McCann, her experience is like just a recap of what was happening in like episode 1.
Yeah.
And so it's like, you walked into the weird sex cult and were uncomfortable about all the weird sex stuff happening.
I think, Anyway, so we're back to the cloning. The other scientist is asked, Damien Marsick is his name. He's asked to keep quiet Brigitte says that like it'll happen, it's just premature. Like that's his side of the story, is that like Brigitte only cared about media. I had to keep this all under wraps.
What was he doing in that lab? He's like, I was in this lab all this time.
Yeah, like he was really interested in science, but she just wanted to have photos taken. I'm not sure. I mean, like now he works at a genetics lab in China. So he's a genetic scientist. But yeah, we don't get that either. One of the followers says, you know what? If she was telling the truth, good on her. We made a clone. If she was lying, well done, because it dared us to dream. Like there are several, right? There are several followers that are like, I don't know. I mean, and Brigitte
Schrödinger's clone.
Yeah, like Bosselier says sort of the same thing, like at the end of the series of like, if Raël is just creating this alien hoax, that doesn't change anything for me. I would still have the life that I love my life. It's what it is. So there's just, I mean,
the real clone was the friends we made along the way.
So Brigitte in interviews, and still in the interview that she gave for this documentary, like still continues to claim that Eve is real. But the reporter, the other Brigitte, releases the report. Now there's all this media backlash in the States. Cut to 2021 Japan. That's where Raël lives now. He's still gaining followers as far as we know. And then, like people are talking about why he's important. We meet his new angels. He says the purpose of life is to be happy. You shouldn't stop laughing. I don't claim to have any special powers. I'm just a messenger and the last prophet for the Elohim. What he said about cloning too, I thought was really interesting. He was like, I mean, this whole cloning thing, we are very, like, he was like, the Pope came out as being anti-cloning.
Yeah.
That meant that I was pro-cloning and wanted to, yay cloning. And then Brigitte came to me and said she could do it for real because she's a geneticist and a scientist, a chemist. And so, sure, go for it. And he just that was his relationship to cloning. They definitely did not have a sense of, like, their theology is pretty materialistic in terms of like, there's no life after death, soul that is metaphysical, that kind of thing. We extend life into immortality through gains of science and technology.
Yeah. Which I think actually frames the whole, like, the point of life is to be happy, because it is a kind of like oblivionist. Yeah. It's sort of like, if that's the case, then it totally changes the sort of like calculus of what we're supposed to be doing.
Right. And your relationship to something called human meaning or whatever.
Right. Because even the cloning thing, it's not like that immortality. Like there's not even, maybe it is somewhere that we didn't get in the documentary, but there's no like theory of consciousness that like the cloned version of you is going to somehow be connected to the current version of you. Yeah. Right.
Raël is living now in Japan. The other contemporary piece of information that we get is from the Ivory Coast, also in 2021.
Yeah.
Where we meet Yves Bonny. He was a Raëlian since the mid-90s. He sees himself as the African prophet, like the Elohim's prophet in Africa. There are, at least in 2021, 400 members there, like 30 different guides. So he wants to see the embassy for the Elohim built in Africa. And he thinks it'll be like a redemption for a continent that's, been through the Middle Passage and like various forms of colonization over hundreds of years.
And he connects it back to like traditional African religion.
I mean, over thousands of years. Yeah, exactly. And then the closing voices of those who are still believers and those who feel resentful and manipulated. Like that's how we end. Like, here are the people who say that this gave meaning to my life. And then the people who say this was a waste of 30 years of my life, back and forth. But then at the very end, we just get 3 updates that all of which we knew already. Like,
right.
I don't know.
We didn't know.
We didn't know about Damien Marsik's job.
Was in China.
Right.
The real ending for me was like before that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what she said. I didn't write down, but Brigitte kind of like implies that it doesn't matter if any of it is real.
Yeah. If Raël was
like the cloning,
just giving
Raël,
a hoax,
all of it, who cares?
I would laugh.
Yes.
And I would say that my life is like I would change nothing.
Which is actually makes logical sense within the Raëlian, right? Because it got her. She seems quite happy with her life. I mean, anyway.
I mean, the house is nice. It looks nice. It looks really, really good.
Yeah.
I don't. Yeah. That's that.
She's unable to leave Mexico,
dude.
But.
Economic context also is something that we don't get a lot of about, like how different people make their money. But
yeah,
it's fine. I did not like this documentary.
This is your.
I buried the lead.
This is your. You.
I buried the lead.
This is your Jonestown.
Did not like this documentary. Maybe this is why I was zipping through. Like, here's episode 1. I don't know.
It wasn't the best. It wasn't the. It didn't anger me.
Yeah.
Like you seem to be like.
I'll tell you.
It. Like I didn't actively not like it. It wasn't. I didn't think it was the best.
Maybe it's just because it's the end of the semester and there's a lot going on. It's because we're between holidays. But we'll get there. What do you want to talk about?
Okay. So thinking about this whole documentary and listeners, just go watch it first, and come back because I need
then come back and hop aboard.
Yeah. So like, okay, I don't know if it's me or if it's like we said, if this is a seasonal affective disorder, or what, but like Raël just seems like such a cliche to me. The way he looks, the way his whole bit.
Oh,
like,
Michael.
And like,
I've missed you so.
Like,
it's been too long since we've had one of these conversations. Go on, tell me more.
Have I seen this too many times? Is his gimmick too derivative when he's in the white and he's on the TV show? Like, or am I missing that he was actually like skilled at manipulating the media more than other people? Because like,
why would he need to manipulate them more though?
Like, is he like?
To get
I don't
get documentary treatment. We know that nobody has to be special to get documentary treatment.
I guess that's true. I guess that's kind of my thing is like, I mean,
I'm so excited to talk about I mean, like we have talked about a few that I really, really like. I'm very excited. Eventually we'll get to it. We just don't know when. We've been putting it off because there's so much to it, but eventually when we talk about The Vow, like it's a really well done documentary.
Yeah, you've seen that one. I haven't seen it yet.
Ooh. Okay. Anyway, sorry. Off track.
So I made the argument last episode that Twin Flames was really good at culting. Right.
Yeah, and I pushed back on that. Yeah. I didn't write a show description. I will, everybody. But I did push back on that point.
Right. But my point was like I could at least see, like, even if I didn't find them charismatic and I could see the way that they were able to build this thing that was like, right? But this guy didn't seem to make that much money. Right. It didn't have that many people.
Right.
It didn't have run into any like I don't know if you this is a sports phrase, so it may not ring, but like he just seemed like
how dare you?
He seemed like a
how dare you?
He seemed like a replacement level charismatic leader.
Okay.
And I was just like, okay.
I may not be a sports person, but I can read context clues. I can understand what a replacement person is.
His wins above replacement would not be high.
Okay.
Is he a cliche? I guess is my question. Is that like that's my reading? I just read him as like a very cliched character.
Why does I mean all of it's a cliche though. Like I think that everything that can be packaged into something that then fits into a genre called cult documentary is a cliche that then we read as media consumers as an exception to the religious rule because we don't make documentaries about Lutherans or whatever.
Always Lutherans.
I mean, I'm sure that there is like I don't know, Ken Burns treatment of the I don't know. But like, but not in cult documentary way. Not in some kind of like media expose. Not in like telling the real story behind the blah. Like,
but in the year of our Lord 2024, right? Like, if you're making a cult documentary
in the year of your Lord,
whatever,
yes. Go.
Like in 2024, you're making. I guess I feel like this is a genre. Like we have an entire spreadsheet of these, right? That there has to be something either about the characters involved or your presentation of it that is offering something different and new.
Really?
Right?
You feel that way?
To make it a good documentary.
To make it a good documentary.
Right, that's my point.
But not to get
so
not to
I
get
guess
made.
my question is, no, not to, well, it should be to get made. We shouldn't make bad.
I
We shouldn't celebrate the production of mediocrity. But like
it's Walgreens and CVS sitting catty corner at an intersection, man. It's all the same stuff.
But like
in my opinion. Like I'm not saying that I'm not trying to conflate media nuance at all. Like that's not what I mean. I mean that the and I absolutely I mean, yeah, we're gonna get to my own problems with this documentary, but it's, I guess to me, like we as media consumers are the cliche, maybe, that like our expectations that we bring to the table of something called cult documentary is the thing that invites cliche. Okay.
Maybe.
Okay.
I think I have higher expectations of this than you, of this genre.
I'm sure that you do.
Because
or maybe my expectations are so high that like that. I mean, I think actually what it is. I don't think it's that. I don't think that it's we have. I mean, well, I don't know. I still haven't watched Love Island. We should do that over the holidays. Okay. That'll be your Christmas gift to me.
Sure.
Or mine to you. I'm not sure. But I think that it's more about, you think that there is utility in the label cult too.
Maybe.
Right?
I'm not committed to that.
And identifying.
I'm playing around with that. That's a thought experiment.
Or like identifying too, like who means it and who doesn't. Or who's using a gimmick and who's like really, right?
Yeah.
There's
I think what it comes down to is there's a phrase, here's your pro wrestling moment. Okay. There's a phrase in pro wrestling about you should never insult your audience, right? So that's the reason you always keep up the game, that it's real, because you don't want to insult your audience, right? You don't want to treat your audience like they're stupid.
Well, and you also want to recognize like you are suspending disbelief, and I get it, and so we are going to engage in this kind of like visual language game together.
So I feel like when you have a documentary like this one that doesn't bring anything new to the table, right? Either in presentation, characters, whatever. Then when the character just feels like a derivative, very derivative, and maybe it's not derivative, but then I feel like you've insulted me as the audience.
Yeah.
I feel like I right? Like, especially when it's 20, like it'd be one thing, you can do a much more straightforward documentary in 2017, and I'm like, this is like foundational, like the Scientology, like this is how you do, this is how this whole thing got started.
Okay.
But like the TikTok one, like interesting angle, the social media way, the way it's shot, the way it's like halfway a kind of reality TV show.
Yeah.
Interesting, right? Like, man, we were just at the American Academy of Religion. I had 4 different people talk to me about Mormon wives, the secret life, with unsolicited by me.
Sure.
And they didn't even know. I don't think they'd listened to our show. They were just like, you seem like you'd know about.
How dare they?
Well, yeah. Well, now they do. Right?
Yeah, sure.
Like, by the way.
Certainly.
And so I guess I feel like that, to me, even the ones that I had problems with, or I didn't think like they still had something extra, some new thing, some wrinkle. And this one just did it. It just relied on it being like, look at this weird French guy and these weird people in cloning. And it just wasn't enough.
I get it. I mean, sure.
That's my take.
Sure. I don't disagree. I just feel like
that's not worth getting upset about.
Well, okay, it's like this. It's like this essay that was written by, like, it's final exam time, right? So we're all getting papers and projects and we're collecting our things and we're giving grades. To say this essay was better written than this other essay. Yeah, I probably agree. I have thoughts about that. Okay. The craft of writing, 10,000%. I'm saying I have some questions about your assignment. You know what I mean? I don't think that the essay prompt is one that invites a lot of good writing.
This is the difference.
Yeah.
I think that there's a difference between, say, a good reality show and a bad reality show, or a good
No, I think that could be true.
Yeah.
It's not a
I'm coming at this as an appreciator of the genre.
Of the craft.
Yeah. And saying like
100%.
this is
Well, I can't stop watching them either, right? So like there is something about the genre that compels me.
Yeah.
So it's not a problem necessarily with the genre. It is, I think, what the genre so quickly taps into about social norms and expectations surrounding something called cults.
Yeah.
I find those norms and expectations a bad prompt. And so that's not the documentary's fault necessarily. They're responding to, but like, there's always this Mobius strip of like how media creates the thing that you want to consume and you want to consume it. And so then they create it. Like it's always this back and forth. But so yeah, I think that there are better and worse ways to do that thing. There's always going to be like comment about craft.
Right.
I just, I'm always going to have this kind of like,
see, I think of these as like sonnets. Right?
Okay. I think we're on the I want to count up how many metaphors we've used in this one. We feel like we have a special amount of metaphors thing about today.
Like as I was when I was an English major in college, and they're like sonnets are this like the form forces you to then like forces the creativity within the form or whatever.
Yeah, sure,
right?
Sure.
And so I think that's what I'm looking for in these is like, how do you do a cult documentary?
This is why you always want a 3-act play kind of
or
thing. You want a 3-act arc.
It doesn't have to have a 3, but some like.
That's why you like it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So there is a form. So then do the form, but then do the thing in the form that's unexpected, surprising, interesting, new.
Yeah,
different.
I get that.
I don't know. And I guess I feel that way about like the cult leaders themselves. Like if you're going to be a charismatic cult leader, do it with some panache. That's unexpected. If I'm going to want to hear the story.
I have nothing to say about that one. I have nothing to say about that last part.
What do you want to talk about?
Okay.
I'm probably cutting a lot of that.
Yeah. Well, no. Who can say? We had to migrate today. I feel I blame all of our like.
If we sound very different, or you hear grad students in the background,
my goodness,
it's because undisclosed location.
we're in a media bunker. Okay, so I will say very quickly that the documentary leaves out a lot of context about this group. You mentioned Susan Palmer.
Yeah,
she co-authored with Brian Sentes a chapter in the Cambridge Companion to New Religious Movements. Yeah, that's its own, genre that I have questions about. But
companions or New Religious Movements?
Yeah, but like whatever. Cambridge Companions can be great. Point is, I guess I'm trying not to pick on like cult documentaries as a genre. Regardless, they have a chapter in that. Like for more info, see their chapter because you always will get a pretty specific, like there are always suggestive claims present in what on the surface may seem like neutral or objective reporting. Always 10,000% of the time. So you're always going to come away with, and maybe that'll depend on interpretation and whatever, but like you're going to come away with a sense of what the narrative is about, the story that you would tell about this group or whatever the thing is about. The fact that like what they decided to put in and what they decided to leave out is always a question that I have as a kind of live thing while I'm watching these. And it's not because I think that there's like, this is still the fake story. Here's the true story. Here's the authentic record of like what. It's not that. It's just that it tells you something about the kind of story that they want to tell, So, for example, and these are just a smattering, just a quick little few. Part of their origin narrative is like after the bombing of Hiroshima, there began an age of apocalypse. People need to advance through science and technology toward peace rather than toward nuclear war.
All right. Yeah.
Sure. Like lots of people were saying things like that. And also that seems like a totally...
Yeah. It explains why they never have guns.
Dude.
Well, they were in Canada, but also they never have guns.
I'll get there. Okay, so only once that happens, once there is a peaceful society advanced by science and technology, that is when the Elohim will return and share their technology to build a paradise. So they're they're millenarians in that way. That's why it's important to create the embassy to greet them. That context did not get presented in the story of why we need this multi-million-dollar embassy that's going to take 8,000 years to build. We don't hear that the group doesn't really believe in souls or suicide, that the only means of survival is to extend life through these scientific means. That's why cloning makes sense of cloning.
Yeah.
It is not to say that then this is great. This is that's none of my business. But it does give context for why sexual liberation and self-reflection would that kind of peace society of free love and connection through non-hierarchical relational means also connects with something like cloning, which was not a narrative bridge that was provided to us. They have, pretty progressive ethics in terms of gender is a construct. They reject a lot of labels that tend to accompany things like gender and sexuality. There's again, nominal, right? There are always, of course, there are people that, do all sorts of terrible things.
Yes.
But again, see also those leaflets of don't send your kids to Bible study. There is a nominal respect for racial and cultural difference and nonviolence, like you were just talking about. Gay rights, they've marched for gay rights, etc. We hear about Raël's angels because those seem weird and wacky. We do not hear about Raël's girls, who are self-describedly, quote, a group of women who work in the sex industry and lobby against restrictions on women's sexual activity. There's also the Raëlian Association of Sexual Minorities, which is an alliance for gay and transgender folks. So I am not, again, none of that should be its own thing that is offered to then say, okay, well, so then it's this. Nope. What it is to do, though, is to try to give more context to what I thought over 4 episodes was they had time and space, but there was a pretty narrow presentation.
And I didn't know this until this moment. I was but immediately connects them to a whole host of other groups across at least US history. Not to mention your larger sort of European and American religious history that are all about we're in a new millennium, and so marriage and sex and gender,
of course,
Quakers, early Quakers, Oneida,
because humans aren't what you think they are. That's part of their whole thing. Is if you really recognize the Elohim and they recognize your recognition, part of what you understand is that you are made in the image of extraterrestrials.
Yeah.
And that messes with our very human constructs. So, and they also have a lot to say about things like consent and condemnation of sex crimes and pedophilia, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know. I think what this documentary is a good example of are competing claims about the idea of something called human progress.
Right.
And what it means to progress as humans, what it means to be a human making progress. That idea.
That makes sense at the end when he because he's basically rendered by the end. They're trying to render him as a charlatan, right? That's the argument. And but at the end he talks about I spend my whole life trying to forget, right? That makes a kind of logical sense with this framing, right? If it's about human progress, if it's about both individual and kind of species-wide progress, and if it's about there's just sort of the you now, and then oblivion or immortality, depending on what happened, right? And so that it doesn't come off as a way to forgive a bunch of crimes in your past,
right?
And it doesn't, at the same time that we let any number of evangelical Christian men just be like, grace, forgiveness, and now I'm going to go right back and
That's right.
take all my power back.
I mean,
so I
yes.
think that's really helpful, like right there.
This is also why all of the people who are still followers don't really care if it's true or not.
That's the most, yes. And I think too, like
it's just not the
there's
point.
an assumption baked into to this documentary and others that like, well, if he's a liar, then it's all fake. And all of those, all of that stuff that you just described doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And it's like, we don't know, like all of those things you lay out. Because I was looking it up. I have like an old, it's from like the early 2000s, like Encyclopedia of Nudist Movement. It has like a 2-page little spiel on them and lays out more of the kind of like origin myth.
There's a really complicated theological structure behind all of this. Like, go read their dogma, but it's, But
like, whether that comes out of his 2 books or whether it's worked out through the experience of building this movement, it doesn't really matter if he believes it or not.
Yeah.
Or how it comes about, if it's active as a way that people are organizing their and moving in the world.
This is why what I find more interesting than him is our relationship to sincerity and sincere religious belief. And I feel like a lot of times what this genre kind of plays into is that expectation that we bring to the table of like, if you mean it, then it's different.
Right.
And that part of the problem is that these people were just out for money or fame or abuse or whatever. And it's like, well, okay. But
this is why I found Brigitte way more compelling than Raël, because with her, maybe she was the interesting wrinkle if I'm looking for one, in that like she wanted to run a lab and do this stuff. And I don't know, like, it doesn't really matter whether it was his idea or her idea, but like she figured out a way to do it. Like,
or maybe she just wanted her picture taken, like the other guy said, in front of a microscope.
Sure.
And like, I don't know that even matters. It's also though, like, again, take nothing away also from his feeling that like he wasted 30 years of his life. That sucks.
Yeah.
And so it isn't to say that, but all of that though, like whether it was or wasn't a waste of someone's time, whether or not this person is or is not telling the truth, all of that just seems very human to me. Like that's what seems human about all of this. It's not to do with like sincerity or whatever.
That's a good segue to your takeaway.
My takeaway is I just have human exceptionalism equals meh. I don't know. I find claims to human exceptionalism are not hard to find. Lots of people make them in different ways. And a lot of those ways are in competition with one another.
Can you define human exceptionalism?
Oh, that what matters in life is to protect the human, like as a species at all cost. That human life is necessarily like the apex of species sentience. That our species is somehow like more important than other species.
Right.
That yeah. Like I think that whether that gets presented through, like, I think that a lot of people present ideas about human exceptionalism through religious belief. I think a lot of people do it even through, I mean, a lot of the new atheists are also very big on human exceptionalism. So I don't think I think that there are a lot of competing ways that the human as an idea and as a phenomenon gets offered as like something that is exceedingly biological, that is this particular kind of phenomenon that has this or that relationship to other species that blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I just don't. I find that its own kind of defensive response to existence. Like we are thrust into existence. We did not ask to be born.
Right.
That's a lot of confusing chaos to grapple with. And so we need to make meaning out of it. And so I need to believe that this species is like, which is not to say that humans matter a lot, but
looking at
not at the expense of other species.
Yeah. Cause I was curious. I was curious, like, whatever happened to cloning? Cause like, if you do like the Google Ngram search, which is like, you search for like cloning or even like human cloning, it like definitely like peaks in 2002 and then just drops precipitous as fast as it shows up. Right. And like all of the rhetoric or like the UNESCO or WHO stuff about cloning is exactly the kind of human exceptionalism argument you're talking about.
I mean,
which is fascinating. That's obviously where how Raëlian ideology runs across that.
Yes, and reproduces the same logic that its conservative counterparts inside the American government that say no to cloning across time and space.
Right.
And also life at all cost, regardless.
Yes. Well, and
so that's going to be the same people that overturn Roe v. Wade that then also want to get away from human cloning. And I just
funny side note.
It just is all exhausting.
Do you know Mark Hunt, the father who wanted to clone his son?
No.
Do you know where he ended up?
Nope.
He ended up going to Congress in the state of West Virginia, and was elected initially as a Democrat and then ran later as a Republican.
I mean, all right.
So there's a whole Wikipedia page for people to go look at.
Yeah, there's your rabbit hole, everybody. What's your takeaway, Mike?
Besides the believe it or not of it all, that these documentaries, that they're often these stories of like transformation for the people in these groups. So whether you're looking at like Damien, who leaves it after 33 years, like when these documentaries are always about, and I think we've said this before, but like by the end, people are not where they were at the beginning, right?
Sure.
That's why you need your little explanations or whatever.
Sure.
And so I think that like it is the story of transformation that we see, like, because this was such a kind of like, there was a kind of a large cast in this one as far as people they talked to, and it wasn't sort of focused on like one leader or one thing, one moment. And so by seeing that transformation, I feel like that is the thing that a lot of people respond to that makes these popular. Is like there is a resonance with people seeing different versions of people, like literally like in the films or the images or whatever. And I thought about this because like Raël is so good at reinventing himself from like the dark, turtleneck guy in the beginning to like, kind of space age man at the end. To then like
still singing the same folk song.
He is. The folk songs never stop. But like, so we were sort of attracted to that similarity, but the strangeness of the experience of like Raëlianness or whatever is what. It's that combination of like I can resonate with that individual transformation thing, but then I can also see, oh, that was so weird though. Like to me, that is part of what this was me hunting for something I liked about the documentary.
Okay.
So that I think is part of why these documentaries are so inviting or attractive.
I think that they give us a great occasion to examine some things about ourselves. I think that they are a great moment for self-reflection that do not require actual literal mirrors.
That's what I was thinking as you said that. And I let it.
I know you were.
I let that just go right by.
All right.
What is your cult favorite?
Okay. So we're almost at the end of 2024. It's been a weird year, but I feel like it's been a weird year is something that we've been saying for a good handful of years now.
A normal weird year.
Yeah. And like, we're facing a lot of things to come. So here's what did happen this year though. That was really, really, really great. Beth Gibbons of Portishead fame put out a solo album, her debut album this year. It's called Lives Outgrown. Kim Gordon also put out a solo record, The Collective. Amazing, gorgeous piece of art. I have already talked about how much I love Sleater-Kinney's Little Rope. That was released in January. And Kathleen Hanna released her memoir this year too. So these are all incredible makers, women who helped me get through my late teens and early 20s, sonically, but also personally. And I am just feeling mega grateful to them for making new things. I think that they are people who very much show up on in their own good time. They work on their own schedules, but it's like uncannily the right time.
May we all work on our own schedules.
Man, if you're in their demographic, which I very much am, like I am driving the center of that lane. It's also exactly the right time. And so it makes you feel like you are kind of somehow in this thing together. So thanks for giving us something in the malaise of 2024 to help us face what's to come. Beth and Kim and Carrie and Corin and Kathleen et al. Like, they're just, I mean, yeah. The youngest among them is 50. Carrie Brownstein. And so Kim Gordon is 70 something.
Yeah.
She's the categorical coolest human on the planet. Like, anyway.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
No, peel back the curtain a bit. Like, depending on what's going on, we log into this document where we put these down, and if Merinda put hers in, and then I'm like, oh crap, that's really good and meaningful.
I mean, sometimes it's cilantro stems.
Sometimes it is, but
yeah.
But anyway, so but it got me thinking about one of my new favorite apps. I'll show you. It's a visual medium, but it's Finch. So Finch is like Duolingo for self-care.
Okay.
So you get.
I'm just thinking of like how scolding my little Duolingo.
No, it's better than that
thing is all the time. No, I don't want to be scolded about self-care.
I quit Duolingo because it was making me feel bad.
Yeah.
No. So, but you get this little burb, they call it.
Okay.
And
it looks like the bird is wearing a toupee.
No, that's just his head.
Is that his head?
Yeah.
Okay.
But like you get a little burb, and you get and you can dress them up and stuff.
Aww. Okay.
Dress them up and stuff.
Sure.
And you can but then it also gives you what it really is though is it gives you a little list of like things to help you self-care items.
Okay.
So like
stop looking at your phone.
Actually, yes. Avoid doom scrolling before bed is one of mine. If you can see here.
I just love this is the perfect. Oh my God! You should listen to Kim Gordon's new album, The Collective.
My point is, it's very helpful, right? So
she has a lot to say about social media.
This isn't social media. This is just
no.
You.
I know. Well,
bird.
yeah. Your own relationship to technology. I guess I should say.
But it has like reflection and journaling prompts. It has breathing exercises. It has a little. What I like is handy. It has a little first aid kit of like stuff to do if you're stressed. To do. And then on top of that, you get to decorate your little dude, so like your little bird person.
Sure.
And you get to decorate their room. Kind of great too. Like you get to have they have like a little house.
Perfect.
A skateboard.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you're it. I found it. I used to use just like a to-do list of like I'm gonna like whatever meditate, journal, whatever. But this has actually been really fun, and I think it's good.
Okay.
And I recommend it. You can get it. It's free on like Android and Apple, and yeah. So
Perfect.
yeah, their name is Slim Jones.
I tell you what, if I make you a playlist, and I agree to try the free version of what's it called, Finch. I would try Finch for 1 week if you listen to a playlist that I make you.
I'll listen to anything. No, I'm sure. Yeah. Sure. Make me a playlist.
Maybe my work would be harder in that one then. Okay.
No, I don't. I think I'm a huge fan of I love making people playlists. it's a very like my teenage love of high fidelity.
Sure.
But yeah.
Make your loved ones mixtapes for the holidays.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Cult Fave, everybody. You can subscribe to the podcast and be sure to leave us ratings and reviews. Find us socials at Cult Favorite Pod. Give us feedback, DM us, comment, all those sorts of things. And special thanks to the Department of Religious Studies at the University of Alabama. We are holed up in an undisclosed location on campus where we found microphones and we're able to put this together. Because
the department offers innovative digital tools.
That's right. Folks. That we have a whole MA degree or master's degree that combines social theory and digital tools. And it's designed to equip students with all sorts of analytical communication and digital skills, and also rigorous coursework and research. So it's for careers or PhD programs. So there you go. We'll see y'all in 2 weeks.
Yes, we've got exciting things coming up.
We're
almost at the end of the year.
We're almost at the end. I think we're getting close to what we're calling the end of season 1.
Mm-hmm. It was jam-packed. It was a busy one.
But speaking of progress,
you'll get half the content, double the fun.
But go back and if you listen to episode 1 to this one, episode 18,
you're finding your own
there's
narrative
progress
arc
happening. Yes.
I'm here for it, Michael.
See y'all.